Hey guys, LevelCap here. Today we're going to be talking about the SW40, some of the patch changes to Revolver mechanics, and then just some of the patch changes in general. What's changed, what to look for, some of the ninja changes especially that weren't really listed in the patch notes that might affect you. And first item on the list is the new Revolver, the SW40. This thing looks cool. It sounds awesome. It's this tiny little revolver. It can look really cool once you upgrade it with some of the neat sights like a laser sight and then the red dot sight on top. What it has going for it versus say the 44 Magnum or the MP412 Rex is that it fires a lot faster. Its rate of fire is 220 rounds per minute compared to the Magnum's 150 rounds per minute or the Rex's 180 rounds per minute. Now obviously we can't have a revolver that just shoots faster and doesn't have any other side effects. This one unfortunately isn't quite as accurate while aiming down sights as the other two. The Magnum has a 0.1 aiming down sight accuracy, which is very good. You can essentially snipe people with the 44 Magnum. The MP412 Rex has a 0.3 aiming down sight accuracy, which is sort of on par with it, say a carbine's accuracy. It's still very good and capable of hitting people at further ranges. And then the SW40 has a 0.5 aiming down sight accuracy, which is pretty bad, but frankly, it's somewhat accurate compared to, say, pistol versus rifle accuracy. I would say it's somewhat on par. It's not to say that you can't hit people at further ranges, but you might be aiming directly at them and just miss a long-range shot. That being said, you're probably not going to want to go for too many long-range shots with this weapon. It only has 6 rounds before you have to reload, and basically at further ranges it's going to be doing so little damage that you're still going to have to 4-shot somebody. So it's going to be very hard to kill people at really long range with this gun anyway. You're going to want to keep it for close to medium range encounters only. Now in close range, it does have the capability of 1-shot headshotting somebody or 2-shot body shotting them, so it can certainly surprise some foes, and if you got that awesome accuracy, then you can even take down somebody with a full auto assault rifle, assuming you get the first shot off. Now one of the updates in the latest patch that I was most excited for was the reduction in the revolver trigger delay. Basically, if you've been using revolvers at all in Battlefield 4, there is a time between clicking the mouse or pulling the trigger on your console controller between the time that it actually fires, and this makes it really hard to hit moving targets or anticipate your enemy. There's so much movement in Battlefield 4 and the gameplay is so fast and chaotic that having a trigger delay like this makes some guns virtually ineffective completely. It doesn't matter what their damage model is. If you can't hit your target, then it doesn't really matter. Now this has been reduced, and the reduction certainly is welcome, but I'm not sure if the reduction is actually enough to make these guns something that people are going to start using. It's still at the point where I don't feel comfortable enough to actually reliably hit anybody. If it's a standing still target, then that's fine, but this is Battlefield 4. It's crazy, it's fast-paced, it's chaotic, people are jumping everywhere, and when you have that kind of movement, having a trigger delay of any time is really going to hurt a gun. I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I gotta say, I'm probably still not going to use revolvers at all. DICE has really picked a weird spot to argue realism versus fun gameplay, and frankly, I don't even think their decision for trigger delay does reflect realistic gun mechanics. Revolvers often have longer trigger pulls and harder trigger pulls, but once the hammer swings down, it's instantaneous. So to try and, I think, simulate the effect of a harder trigger pull or a longer trigger pull, they just made a trigger delay, which frankly is not realistic, and in real life you should be able to be pretty damn accurate with a revolver, especially if you're used to shooting one and you know how hard the trigger pull is. Now another important update that came on the March 6th patch was an increased accuracy to specific shotguns while on the move. The 870 MCS, the Hawk 12 gauge, Spaz 12, and the UTS 15 all got accuracy bonuses while moving around. So I'm testing that out here, and I have to say the 870 NCS feels like it's back to its old self. I feel like I can consistently get kills in close quarters with it now. I am using flechette rounds instead of buckshot. I've kind of sworn off buckshot because of the defensive perk mitigating a huge percentage of the damage of buckshot and just not being able to predict if you're going to one-shot somebody or not. So rather than have that, I'm just going to take the defensive perk out of the equation and just use flechette rounds all the time so I know how much damage I'm going to be doing. Now there's been some other really important tweaks in there. One of them is the tank traction. Tanks used to just just slide all over the place. They really resembled hovercrafts more than tanks in terms of their traction. Their traction has now been increased threefold, so you shouldn't really be sliding anywhere, and they should actually somewhat resemble tanks now when you drive them around. Unfortunately, this is really bad news for the tank drifting circuit. Now, there's been a lot of other little weapon tweaks and additions here and there. The 1911 has become more accurate and does more damage. So if you haven't used the 1911 in a while and you really miss it from Battlefield 3, give it another try. It's going to be a lot better now. The heavy barrel attachment for all guns has now given an aiming down sight accuracy increase while on the move. Before, it just gave you an aiming down sight increase while standing still. But if you want to run a setup that allows you to sort of side strafe while aiming at the same time, the heavy barrel is now going to be a much more effective attachment. I anticipate seeing some combinations between the ergo grip and heavy barrel now for somebody who likes to be really precise but also move while shooting. In fact, that really resembles my playstyle a lot. I'm probably going to give it a try with a lot of assault rifles. And speaking of assault rifles, the L85 has had a damage reduction. I've seen a lot of that gun recently. It had an 800 round per minute rate of fire but has been nerfed to 750 rounds per minute. So if you've been using that gun a lot and all of a sudden you feel slightly less effective with it, that's why. Attack helicopters and scout helicopters have gotten some pretty big changes. One of them is the physical impact from surface-to-air missiles have basically been reduced, and not the physical damage, but the physical impact. So helicopters would get flipped over a lot from these missiles impacting them, and it would just basically cause them to crash. Nobody would get the kill for them, they would die, everybody would be kind of upset. Now they should crash less from getting hit by rockets, and you're going to actually have to disable them and take them down in order to take them out. Both the helicopter's gunner and primary weapons have gotten a damage increase. Zuni rockets now do more damage, so give those a try if you're using them before. They're essentially just going to be a lot better. The damage increase is quite substantial. The gunner's cannon can now do a lot more damage to armor, so the pilot and gunner can now basically team up on armored targets and take them out much quicker. One of the biggest changes listed in the patch was fixed an issue with blood effects, damage indicators, and health bar updates in the heads-up display being out of sync. This issue meant that players would sometimes miss information about being shot at or get the impression of too few hits occurring for the amount of bullets that were shot. Now, this is a great update. The only problem is that I've been playing the game for quite a while now, and I have not seen any evidence of this. I will often die without receiving any hit markers depending on the server that I'm playing in, and when I do get hit markers, they're often pointing in a different direction than the damage is actually coming from. The network issues, the netcode of Battlefield 4 has been such a long, ongoing issue, an ongoing process. I'm really kind of tired of dishing out specifics of what's wrong with the game. All I will say to this is, for users and to the developers, go play a round of Battlefield 4, then load up Battlefield 3, play a game of that. Then go play a game of Battlefield 4, then go play a game of Battlefield 3. The difference is staggering. Battlefield 3 feels so much better, and even then, I felt like the Battlefield 3 network code was somewhat lacking, but if we could even get Battlefield 4 close to the state of Battlefield 3, I think we would be in a much better state. So screw the specifics, just make it play somewhat like Battlefield 3, and I think everybody will be a lot happier. It's been over 4 months since the launch of Battlefield 4, and to give DICE some credit, we have seen some big improvements, but then again, the game was in a horrible state when it first launched. You couldn't even really play with bolt-action snipers. It was so bad. Now you can actually snipe. You can use a lot of weapons that would require slightly more precise netcode and for them to actually function correctly. But we're still in a state where it's really bad. Competitive gameplay is not really possible with Battlefield 4. And it's not that I don't appreciate constant patches and adjustments and tweaks on game balancing. You know, there's definitely things that need to be worked on that don't have anything to do with netcode, but then again, if those things are all balanced and fixed and working properly, it doesn't really matter as long as the netcode is in such a shit state. So overall, this patch has been a nice balance update. It's tweaked a lot of guns, things work better now, but the netcode is still crappy. I haven't seen any big changes in my actual gameplay and my enjoyment of Battlefield 4. So I'll say it again, especially if there's any devs watching this video, go play Battlefield 3. see how much better that game plays out versus Battlefield 4. There's some serious underlying issues, I don't know what they are, but the game just feels snappy, it feels good, and until Battlefield 4 is in that kind of working condition, none of the topical additions, none of the topical patches or balancing really matters. So I certainly don't like to leave you guys in a down note here, but I feel it's important to really keep pushing the issue of the netcode in BF4 and letting the devs know that we're still not satisfied with the state of the game. As always guys, thanks for watching and I'll see you next time. This is LevelCap signing off.